Welcome to Ticker Talk with hosts Max and Kate, podcasting from Treetown in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Ticker Talk shares the everyday success stories and science behind the heart rate-based functional aerobic fitness training practiced at CrossFit Treetown. Max and Kate explore the research, science, and practical experiences behind Ticker Training, a program developed by Max for just about everyone, your grandma, your cousin who runs marathons, and you. In this series, we'll explore what exactly heart rate-based functional aerobic fitness is, how what you eat affects how you move and how you feel, what tools to use in tracking progress, and how to fit training into your everyday life. Join us and learn something new to make a healthier you. Pace yourself.
I think we are live on Facebook.
We are live on Facebook. Welcome to the Ticker Studio.
I have no idea what that actually means.
The people are watching us right now.
And no one's watching. we have
no followers.
I did load this to Ticker Training, and our Facebook Ticker Training is not quite there yet.
Everybody should be there.
They should. So if you're not,
if you're not watching this, you should find it to watch it.
You should be. That's for sure.
Yeah. All right.
So what are we talking about
now? We've
here?
got this awkward introduction. Kate and Max here in the Ticker Studio. We are going to talk about aerobics.
Yeah, I wanted to just kind of take a minute to talk about the difference between training aerobically and anaerobically, and the benefits to aerobic training and why you would want to spend more time doing that. All that, just I've kind of discussed it in some of my talks that I've given, but I think it's something, when our frequently asked questions, like we get the question, what does aerobic mean, and what does anaerobic mean, and what does it mean to be highly aerobic?
Let's back up. We're going to do this fact style first. What does aerobic mean?
Yeah, aerobic training is just performing life training with oxygen.
And what does anaerobic
That's
mean?
without oxygen.
Whee!
Yeah. So let's just kind of like go through aerobic training to give kind of people some understanding is when you're training aerobically, it's very sustainable. We refer to it as more when you're utilizing fat as your main fuel source, or almost solely your fuel source.
And when we do a PNOE test and I'm picking your aerobic zones, I'm also pinpointing the point at which you are breathing the most oxygen the easiest.
Yeah.
So if I think of doing something with oxygen, then I'm breathing easy and using oxygen.
Yep.
So why would I want to be aerobic? I want to breathe easy while doing everything.
Yeah. Well, aerobic training by nature, it's with oxygen. It's sustainable. Utilizes fat as a fuel source. It's efficient. It's low stress. Creates long-term adaptation. Makes a more enduring athlete. Creates low amounts of inflammation. And you can recover quickly from it.
Which sounds awesome.
Right. It does
Sign
to me
up.
anyway.
Let's just do it.
Right. What's the problem with aerobic training?
It's hard for some people.
Yeah. Well, and it's not sexy. I mean, it is.
It really is, though.
When you become really good at it, like Justin up at CrossFit Twabor, he talks about, people need to understand how cool it is to be able to do CrossFit without a whole bunch of stress.
Okay, I'm thinking about two people when you said it's not sexy. So I'm thinking about two people working out, and you've got the one person who looks like they're having the time of their life, and they look good.
Yeah.
Then you got the person dying.
Sure.
They don't look sexy. You don't want to go anywhere near them. They're flinging sweat all over the place.
No, the one person is just, he's like the Fonz.
Yeah.
He's just cooler.
The Fonz. You just aged yourself.
That's all right. Hey. All right. Anyway, all right, let's talk a little bit about anaerobic training.
Anaerobic athletes are sexy.
Well.
Blanket statement.
Yeah, maybe, right?
Yeah.
All right, so anaerobic by nature is without oxygen. It's not sustainable. And I don't mean just sustainable for more than 20, 30 seconds for some, but I mean just long term, training the majority of your time in a non aerobic or in an anaerobic state is not sustainable. Go ahead.
It seems like there is a time and a place for that. When you were saying, more than 20 or 30 seconds.
Sure, we'll get into that in a minute. Okay. When maybe try to remember to bring that up. Okay. But, anaerobic training by nature is utilizes sugar, carbohydrates as your primary fuel source. It's inefficient, meaning it...
The sugar sounded great until you said that.
Yeah, that's right. It's high stress. It's lower volume. It's higher intensity. You can make quick adaptations to that anaerobic system. You can change it quickly.
It's going to be over quickly too.
Correct. But it's high inflammatory and it takes a lot of time to recover from. Right. So it's everything that I just talked about is a very stressful opportunity to put yourself into. Right?
So if I don't, there are some fun sounding things in an anaerobic workout.
Absolutely.
And yet there's some major glaring things too in bright neon that say maybe it's not as great, not as fun for my system as it seems.
How about let's start with the word without oxygen. Right. High stress.
Yeah.
High intensity. High intensity can be fun and sexy, but how about we make that higher intensity cool by being able to become really aerobic while you're doing it? It's kind of the contrast.
High intensity. Most people, I'm sure there are people that really like the feeling of high intensity.
Absolutely.
However, I think
I kind of like it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the feeling of it or what you can do under high intensity.
Sure.
Like there's a certain level of appeal to the work you can get done
in a short amount of time, yep.
Under high intensity.
Yep. And if we're going to say 3, 2, 1, let's test this thing, right? You're going to need some intensity and you're going to need some high heart rate work.
Sure.
Right?
It's a test.
Yeah.
I mean, even sitting and taking a chemistry test,
right.
Your heart rate's probably higher.
Correct.
There's adrenaline in that.
But the way to get better at that is not strictly through high intensity work.
No, it's studying up, building that base,
You've
that foundation.
Got it. Spending the time, the mundane, sometimes could be considered boring time, earning the right to do the hard, nasty effort to test.
And recovering.
Yeah. Well, just by spending more time being aerobic, you're going to recover faster from your anaerobic.
So that's something that, every fitness program out there, every person that talks about fitness or nutrition all talks about your recovery. Your nutrition needs to be on point so that it helps you recover. Your sleep needs to be at maximal, levels so that you can recover.
Sure.
So we don't say that your training needs to be done in a way that you can recover because you're trying to recover from your fitness.
Yeah,
you can forget the point that you can change your training so that it is recoverable.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: is all of that is reactionary.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like instead of reacting to the stresses, let's just apply the appropriate amount of stress that you don't have to do this crazy amount of recovery for.
You don't want to find out too late.
I don't know about most people, but I don't have another hour to go home and spend the appropriate amount of time eating, compressing, massaging, whatever else people do for their recovery.
Even an hour before you want to train, coming in and warming yourself up for an hour.
Don't
and a
even
half.
let's not even get into the conversation around fueling yourself to perform.
I've got to be ready.
What are you talking about?
Stretching, warming, eating, getting,
right. Again, are we talking about ultimate performance or are we talking about just getting ready?
We can talk about ultimate performance, and even those that prioritize ultimate performance, they're not performing every day.
Right.
It's not something that, I'm an elite athlete every single day. Elite athletes do a whole bunch of dirty work in the gym on a daily basis to train for those
absolutely
events.
To get ready for it.
Yeah. So
I got distracted. I got on Facebook here to see if it was actually working.
And And?
It seems to be working, but...
Those of you in Facebook land, send us a thumbs up. Did somebody thumbs up
Hey, whoa,
us?
look, TJ's hanging out with us. Hey, TJ. Kelly from CrossFit 4D is with us. That's cool. So we have 2 people.
We have 2 followers.
Awesome.
I want to see the thing, when you watch people that have a lot of followers and a little heart come up.
Give us a heart, TJ, would you?
TJ's like, I checked in. You guys are dumb.
He's left by now.
Well, we have a message.
Do we? Hey. It seems to be working. Uh-oh.
Oh, now we're listening to ourselves.
Now we're definitely going in the wrong direction with that. We lost all credibility. Let's see what TJ says. He says, broken system training is what causes stress with stimulus through programming. Even bad programming causes results. Recovery is the goal, adaptation and improvement to the next round of stress. So why not train smart? Focus on a base. He says we all rock.
We do rock.
Yeah, that's cool. Thanks, TJ, for the comment. That's a great point. Kind of reinforces what we're...
Oh, look, hearts.
Yeah, there we go. We got some hearts. This is our first time doing this, everybody, if you can't tell.
We've now figured out we can watch ourselves in the moment.
Yeah, we better make some changes.
No more educational content. Well, okay, so let's get back to what we were talking about. We've discussed what aerobic means, what anaerobic means.
Yep.
We've kind of touched on why we would want to be aerobic, the benefits to being aerobic.
Yeah, we touched on that just to...
But I want to kind of get into, there's like a sub-level, like a basement of aerobic capacity that is aerobic flexibility.
Okay.
So
what do you want to touch on with that?
Well, here we go. So we're going to go in and we're going to do some work.
Are you getting to this? Why do we want to be highly aerobic or working around our math? Is that kind of where we're going with this? Because we have had some feedback from athletes that have training. Some people have really, really low MAFs, and we're like, your MAF is 100 beats, and they're trying to do a lot of work at their MAF. Yep. Okay, so
then they become obsessed with that math.
And their number, and they get a little bit bored, and they're irritated and frustrated. Mm-hmm. We need to make sure we address the idea that even though you have a MAF of 100, let's be real, you and I are just kind of giving those to people so they have some idea of where they're at, which is it's low.
Right.
But we also give you a training zone.
Yes.
Right. So when let's talk real quick about if we're doing a MAT training session, a metabolic aerobic threshold session, and your training zone is 125 to 135, don't go over, we say maybe 145 for that athlete.
We're calling out almost every athlete at 4D.
Right. That's all right. So, what we want to see from people is training their MAT sessions in their, let's call them ticker training zones, right? So that 125 to 135. So let's put it in real terms. The workout is today's rowing and thrusters.
Yep.
Okay.
14 and 7.
Yep. So each time you get off the rower, we want you at the lower end of your training zone.
Okay.
And then when you get off, or when you finish your thrusters, we want you to finish those around the top end of your training zone.
Yes.
Potentially.
Right.
Eventually, hopefully, you can stay closer to the lower end without having to slow down a bunch. But let's just say you finish that thruster at 135, and maybe by the time you sit back down the rower, you have a little more reaction from your heart, and you finish at, you see 140. That'd be a great session if you could continue that routine throughout the entire
or even your
day.
first set, because we're doing 5 sets of that with a minute rest. So, it's flirting and teasing with all the numbers. So you want to get up, you want to do your rowing between your 100 and 125.
Yep.
And then hopefully your thrusters are not pushing you over 135.
Correct.
And the first set goes great. And you're like, I am an aerobic animal.
Yeah.
And then the second set, you realize that in a minute, you're still only getting down to 125. So now it's like 125, 135, 145.
Yep.
And towards the end, we're getting up there.
Yep.
You still spent time around those zones.
Yeah.
So you're still flirting and teasing and teaching your body, like, I really want to stay in this zone.
Yep.
So we're going to learn to become efficient in the zone, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get there.
Right.
Now, maybe if set 2 is when you're pushed over 150, that's when you take weights off the barbell.
Correct. That's a little too early.
Right. You don't want to peak too soon.
Right.
So by set 5, if you're up there in the 140s and you're not recovering, you look at your chart and you realize, awesome, I had 2 sets of really, really good work, and I now know that I just need to work on doing that longer.
Yeah.
You didn't fail for the day. You did awesome work stretching that zone. And
you just got more work to do. That's okay. Right?
It just might take a while. Those with low MAFs, it's really hard to do a lot of CrossFit with a low heart rate.
Yeah. And keep in mind, when you're saying low MAF, you're still referring to their training zones.
Yeah.
Right.
And some of them may feel low, some may not. I had a woman test this weekend that has a really high, if you're someone that's like, I wish that I could work at 180 beats, her 180 is the same as someone else's 120.
Right.
That's where these numbers come in. Like, we can't be so number obsessed to be stuck on having one number or winning one number altogether. Like, once you hit, a MAF of 155, then you are efficient.
Right.
Like, for you, it's just figuring out how much work you can do at 155. Is it what you could currently do at 165? So now you're better at 155?
Right.
Or...
It's just, the whole thing is just playing a little bit.
Right.
Right. And then retesting and seeing how effective was your training.
Right.
That's the cool thing about this is, if it wasn't effective, you can go look and see why, right? So again, most of the time we want you to try to spend as much time in your training zone as possible to improve your aerobic capacity.
And I know when
Hold on, let me go back. So if people aren't seeing improvement in that,
yes,
the coolest thing about this is then we can go into self loops and we can kind of take a few minutes to evaluate and see you really should be training 10 beats lower than you have been. I know it's difficult, but...
Right. Those are those days that it's like I do train around my MAF, and, I did get off the rower and the thrusters within my zones the first set. But then you said it was okay to go higher.
Right.
And that's playing. You need to spend as much... anything you do a lot, spend a lot of time doing, you'll get better at it eventually.
Sure.
Just how long are you willing to commit to get that done?
It takes time. Time.
So the one thing that... I was actually not leading at all into that earlier. I was talking about flexibility and recovery. Flexibility.
Are you trying to tell me that I went off on a completely different tangent? What a surprise. Okay. Sorry.
With flexibility, that did relate to flexibility. But what I was kind of getting into is, for those athletes that are new to this kind of training, their flexibility is just going to be trying to figure out how flexible can they be
I think that is the magic of this training. Is that you have to come in and out of these training zones so often that you will become flexible.
Right. So
as long as you don't just go red line, boom.
And eventually the goal would be that if you do need to reach into that red line for a minute, that you can be flexible enough. And we saw this with an athlete this weekend when we were testing something. He went really hard, and I didn't think about the fact that maybe his metabolism, we gave him that sugar to use, that he wouldn't be able to come back down off of that. Yeah. He wasn't necessarily flexible enough that once you get going, then you can go back there and then become efficient again and then get going.
That takes practice.
We were talking about, I was talking to a physician, and she was saying that, if she thinks about being in a code blue situation, code red. I don't know. I'm not a doctor.
I have no idea where you're going with this. So
something goes awry. You're called in to save the day.
Yep.
The adrenaline response.
Oh, yeah.
And you go and you save the day, and then you sit down or anything. I mean, a parent, same thing. Your kid's going to fall off a dock, and you've got to rush to save them. And then you sit down and how that feels in your system later.
Totally. Well, here's the thing is how we were doing CrossFit before. We were doing that to people daily.
Yeah, we're throwing them off the dock.
We were daily. And you'd leave the gym just crushed from not just from the workout, but from the adrenaline that you were...
Right.
You got thrown into at the start. So.
And now we have a way to see that adrenaline isn't obvious. I mean, we're talking adrenaline. That's a whole separate thing. Sure. But the stress is the same and not the same.
Yeah. Well, it's undue. It's unneeded stress. It's not helping you perform better. Well,
Exactly.
it is, but it's not. But
We are just spinning in circles right now.
well, but again, are we talking about daily life and daily training, or are we
Right.
talking about performing or competing? Right? We don't need to apply. We can all agree that competing, testing, those are a completely different level of stress, or it should be.
Should be.
Than training every day.
Right.
Dude, that we should end on that point.
Phew. Good talk.
That's a close one. Thanks, Kate. Good job. Awesome.
Bye, followers.
Still just 2.